The planet Krithos was unlike anything the human explorers had ever seen. Its skies were painted in deep violet shades, and two suns cast a golden light across the rocky valleys. Ancient ruins spread across the landscape, silent reminders of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. For generations, the alien race known as the Krithians had guarded these ruins with devotion, believing them to be sacred. Among these ruins stood a great temple, carved from crystal and stone, holding a secret no one could claim. The Sword of Eternity, Dr. Marcus Hale, a human scientist and historian, stood at the base of the temple stairs, his boots pressed against the cracked surface of the ground, and his eyes wandered over the carvings etched into the massive walls. His small team of explorers followed behind him, their scanners humming softly. The air felt heavy, almost charged, as if the temple itself was alive. The Krithian guards, tall and muscular beings with ridged foreheads and bronze-colored skin, blocked the entrance. Their armor glowed faintly under the sunlight. One of them, a warrior named Terran, stepped forward. His voice echoed through the air, deep and filled with pride. "No outsider may pass. This temple belongs to Krithos. The sword inside is ours, though none have claimed it." Marcus studied Terran calmly. He had learned long ago that Krithians respected courage, not arrogance. "I understand," Marcus replied in a steady tone. "But I came not to take what is yours. I came to learn. History should not remain hidden." The warrior laughed, shaking his head. "History? You humans chase myths. For centuries, our strongest champions have tried to lift the Sword of Eternity. Even our emperors failed. Do you think your fragile body could do what they could not?" Marcus did not answer. Instead, he turned to the temple wall. His eyes traced the carvings. There were scenes of battle, warriors holding shields, and in the center a strange figure holding the glowing sword. The figure was not Krithian. Its frame was thinner, its posture different. To Marcus it looked human. His heart raced. Could it be? Had the ancient builders known about humanity long before first contact? Or was this just coincidence? He reached out to brush away the dust from the carving. His fingers followed the outline of the mysterious figure. The Krithian high priest, an elder with long silver markings across his skin, stepped forward from the shadows of the temple. His eyes glowed faintly, filled with wisdom and suspicion. "The sword was forged by the ancients," he said slowly. "They created it to test worthiness. Only one with a pure spirit may lift it. But none of my kind have succeeded. That is why the sword remains where it was placed, untouched for thousands of years." Marcus looked at him carefully. "And if the ancients meant for someone else to lift it? Someone not Krithian?" The guards erupted in laughter. Even the high priest smiled bitterly. "Impossible. Who else but us could be chosen?" Still, Marcus felt something stir inside him, a strange pull like a whisper in the air calling his name. He had felt curiosity many times in his career, but this was different. This felt like destiny. The Krithians finally allowed Marcus and his team to step inside, though they made it clear he was there only as an observer. The temple's interior was vast, lit by glowing crystals that pulsed faintly as though keeping rhythm with unseen hearts. Dust hung in the air, disturbed by every step. At the far end of the hall, resting within a massive pedestal of clear crystal, was the Sword of Eternity. It was larger than Marcus had imagined. Its blade shimmered with colors that shifted like liquid light, and its hilt was carved from a black stone that absorbed the glow around it. The weapon radiated power. It was beautiful, but it was also intimidating. The Krithian warriors approached it with reverence, bowing their heads. Terran, the proud warrior, stepped forward and grasped the sword's hilt. His muscles flexed as he pulled with all his strength. His teeth gritted, his face strained, but the sword did not move even a fraction. With a frustrated growl, he released it. "See?" he said, breathing heavily. "It does not yield." One by one, the other Krithians tried. Some pulled with brute force, others with calm focus. None succeeded. The blade remained silent and still, locked in place. The high priest turned toward Marcus. His eyes narrowed. "Do not think this is a game. Many have tried and failed. The sword is not for you." But Marcus could not shake the feeling that the sword was calling to him. He stepped forward. His fellow humans exchanged nervous glances, but they did not stop him. The Krithians scoffed, some whispering insults, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The room grew quiet as Marcus stood before the pedestal. He looked at the blade closely. Strange symbols ran along its surface, glowing faintly as if reacting to his presence. He reached out slowly. his hand trembling. Not from fear, but from anticipation. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, a shock of energy rushed through him. His vision blurred and he felt the weight of countless memories, voices of the past whispering in his ears. He saw flashes of ancient battles not between Crithians but between the ancients and other unknown enemies. He saw the mysterious figure from the carvings wielding the sword against darkness. Gasps filled the chamber as the sword trembled for the first time in thousands of years. The pedestal cracked slightly, a deep sound echoing through the temple. Marcus gripped tighter, ignoring the pain coursing through his arm. His heart pounded as the sword began to glow brighter, illuminating the entire hall. The Crithians staggered back in disbelief, their proud expressions replaced by shock. The high priest whispered in awe, "It responds." Marcus pulled harder, his determination unshaken. The blade shook violently, energy rippling outward, making the crystals on the walls shimmer. Dust fell from the ceiling and the ground trembled beneath their feet. For the first time in history, the sword of eternity was moving. The glow from the sword filled the temple, spreading across the walls like rivers of light. The trembling pedestal sent out deep rumbling sounds, as though the entire structure was waking up from a long sleep. The Crithians stood frozen, their proud faces shifting from disbelief to fear. No one had ever seen the sword of eternity respond to anyone, let alone a human. Dr. Marcus Hale held the hilt firmly, his heart pounding inside his chest. The energy coursing through his body was overwhelming. It was not just strength he felt. It was as though the sword was testing him, measuring something invisible inside him. He could barely breathe under the crushing weight of the force pressing down on his soul. The Crithian warrior Terran shouted angrily, "Release it, human! You are not worthy." He stepped forward, his hands reaching for Marcus, but the high priest raised his staff sharply. "Stop!" the elder commanded, his voice echoing with authority. "Can you not see? The sword has chosen to answer him. No Crithian in all our history has done this. Let it continue." Terran hesitated, his face hardening with pride, but he lowered his arms. The other warriors exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to fear or to admire what they were witnessing. Marcus closed his eyes, struggling to withstand the invisible weight pressing against his chest. Images flashed in his mind, faster and clearer now. He saw Earth, his homeworld, not as it was today, but as it had been across centuries. He saw humans facing storms, famines, and endless wars, yet rising again and again. He saw families rebuilding after destruction, explorers sailing into unknown seas, and astronauts stepping onto the moon for the first time. The sword seemed to be pulling those memories from him, reaching into the very essence of his species. It was not testing his muscles, it was testing the spirit of humanity itself. The glowing symbols on the sword's blade pulsed with every heartbeat Marcus felt. His arms shook, his knees bent, and sweat rolled down his face. His team called out from behind him, "Marcus! Stop before it kills you!" One of his fellow humans shouted, but Marcus ignored them. Deep inside, he knew this was not about power. It was about resolve. He thought of the countless people who had pushed forward despite the odds, who had refused to surrender. He remembered his father's words when he was a boy. "Strength is not how hard you can hit, but how long you can stand." He straightened his back, gritted his teeth, and pulled again. The pedestal cracked wider. The sword lifted slightly from the crystal base, glowing brighter, throwing beams of light against the high ceiling. The temple shook so violently that dust and stones rained down from above. The Crithians staggered, shielding their eyes from the dazzling glow. The high priest whispered, his voice trembling, "The prophecy. It was true. The outsider awakens the blade." Some Crithians fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sight. Others shouted in protest, refusing to believe what their eyes saw. The tension in the chamber grew heavier than the rumbling stone. Marcus felt his body screaming in pain, every muscle begging him to stop. But a deeper voice within him told him to endure. He tightened his grip with both hands and gave one final pull. The sword of eternity broke free. A burst of light exploded outward, a wave of energy so strong it knocked everyone to the ground. Marcus stood in the center, holding the glowing blade high above his head. The weapon hummed with life, arcs of lightning dancing along its edge. The Crithians gasped in shock. Some bowed their heads low, others shouted in disbelief. Terran clenched his fists, his pride shattered as he watched a human achieve what no Crithian ever could. Marcus looked at the sword in awe. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The blade seemed weightless in his hands, yet the power radiating from it was undeniable. He could feel it pulsing not just through his arms but through his very soul. It was as if the weapon was alive, sharing its will with him. But the moment of triumph did not last long. A loud, deep sound shook the temple again, not from the sword this time, but from beneath the ground. The walls vibrated and the floor cracked open in jagged lines. A chilling wind rushed through the hall as the crystal lights flickered. "What is happening?" Marcus shouted over the roar. The high priest's face turned pale. "The Guardian! You have awakened the Guardian!" The ground split wider, and from the depths below, a massive machine began to rise. It was ancient, made of dark metal with glowing red symbols across its chest. Its body was shaped like a giant armored warrior, but its movements were mechanical, each step shaking the earth. The Crithians fell back in fear. "It lives again!" one of them cried. The Guardian's voice boomed, deep and cold. Unworthy hands disturbed the blade. The trial must be fulfilled. It raised one enormous arm, a weapon-like cannon attached to its side, and aimed directly at Marcus. The sword in Marcus's hands vibrated, responding to the threat. Marcus held the blade defensively, his heart racing. He had thought the sword was simply a relic, but now he realized it was far more. It was a key, and unlocking it had awoken a danger greater than any of them expected. The Guardian stepped forward, and the temple shook with every movement. Its red eyes locked onto Marcus, ignoring everyone else. "You must prove your worth," it thundered, "not through strength of body, but through strength of spirit. Defend, protect, endure." Marcus swallowed hard, gripping the sword tighter. He had no training in weapons, no knowledge of how to fight machines of this size, but something inside told him this was not about skill with a blade. It was about proving what it meant to be human. The Crithians shouted warnings and retreated toward the edges of the hall. Marcus stood alone in the center, the glowing sword in his hands, staring up at the towering Guardian. The trial had begun. The Guardian's heavy steps echoed through the temple like thunder. Its glowing red eyes fixed only on Marcus, ignoring the dozens of Crithian warriors who stood frozen around the edges of the hall. Dust shook loose from the ceiling with each movement, and the ancient structure seemed ready to collapse under the weight of this awakening. Marcus's hands gripped the sword of eternity tighter. The blade hummed with energy, glowing brighter whenever the Guardian moved closer. He felt both fear and determination mixing inside him. He knew this was no ordinary test. This was the true trial, the moment when the sword would decide if he was worthy to hold it. The Guardian's voice roared, shaking the air. "Show your spirit, human. Not through destruction, not through conquest. Show your will to protect." Marcus's heart raced. He had never fought anything like this machine. He was a scientist, not a soldier. But he understood the message. The sword was not looking for a conqueror. It was looking for someone who would carry its power with responsibility. The Guardian raised its massive arm, and a beam of red light burst forward, tearing across the temple floor. Stones shattered and heat scorched the air. Crithians screamed, running for cover. Without thinking, Marcus lifted the sword. The blade responded instantly, expanding into a shield of pure light. The beam struck it with tremendous force, but the shield held. The ground trembled beneath his boots, yet Marcus stayed firm, refusing to step back. Gasps filled the chamber as the Crithians watched. No one had ever seen the sword react in such a way. Terran, the proud warrior who had mocked Marcus earlier, stared in disbelief. Marcus gritted his teeth. His arms ached, but he did not lower the sword. "I will not let you harm them," he shouted. The Guardian paused, its eyes glowing brighter as if studying his resolve. Then it moved again, faster this time, swinging a giant metal arm down at Marcus. The sword pulsed, guiding him. He stepped to the side and slashed upward. A wave of light shot from the blade, striking the Guardian's arm. Sparks flew, and the massive limb staggered, leaving a deep scar across its surface. The Crithians cheered, their voices echoing through the hall. For the first time they saw hope. But the Guardian did not stop. It slammed its other arm into the ground, creating a shockwave that sent Marcus flying back. He hit the floor hard, the sword clattering beside him. His vision blurred, pain shooting through his body. His fellow humans shouted his name, but Marcus forced himself up. He crawled toward the blade, his hand trembling as he reached for it again. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, warmth surged into him, lifting him back to his feet. He realized the sword was not just testing his body, it was pushing him to see if he would rise after being knocked down. And Marcus rose again. The Guardian advanced, its steps shaking the ground. Strength is not in standing once, it boomed. Strength is in standing again and again. Marcus raised the blade high. He remembered the images the sword had shown him earlier. Humans facing storms, rebuilding cities, exploring unknown worlds. He thought of his ancestors who had survived impossible challenges. He thought of his team who depended on him now. He charged forward, not with anger, but with determination. The sword blazed brighter than ever, its light filling the entire temple. Each swing was guided by something greater than skill, as though the sword itself was teaching him. He struck the Guardian's chest and the wave of energy pushed the giant machine back. The Crithians watched in silence, their eyes wide. The High Priest whispered, "He fights not for himself but for all of us." The Guardian staggered, sparks flying from its body. Yet instead of falling, it lowered its weapon and raised its head toward Marcus. Its booming voice softened. "You understand," it said. "The sword is not for the strong of arm. It is for the strong of heart." Marcus stood, breathing heavily, the sword glowing in his grip. "I don't want power for myself," he said firmly. "I want to protect, to build, to endure. If that is what you seek, then yes, I am worthy." The Guardian froze. Then its red eyes dimmed, fading into soft white light. The heavy machine lowered to one knee before Marcus, its massive head bowing. "The trial is complete," it declared. "The sword of eternity belongs to you." The temple grew quiet. The trembling stopped. The glowing symbols on the wall slowly faded into calm, leaving the hall in peaceful silence. The Crithians stepped forward, their proud faces humbled. Some bowed deeply, others simply stared in awe. Terran, who once mocked Marcus, dropped to one knee. You did what none of us could. The ancients chose you." The High Priest approached, his old eyes shining with respect. "It seems the ancients never intended for the sword to belong to us. They waited for humanity. For you." Marcus lowered the blade, its glow softening but still alive. He did not raise it in victory. Instead, he held it gently, like a responsibility rather than a trophy. He looked at the Crithians around him. "This sword does not make me better than you. It shows that sometimes strength comes from places we least expect. Perhaps that is why the ancients chose humans. We may be fragile in body, but we never stop getting back up." The Crithians murmured in agreement, their pride giving way to admiration. For the first time, they looked at the human not as an outsider, but as an equal, perhaps even as a guide. As the two sons of Krythos shone through the temple's broken roof, Marcus raised the sword one final time. The blade caught the light, glowing brilliantly, a symbol of hope and unity. The Guardian, now silent, returned to its chamber beneath the temple, its duty complete. The ground closed again, sealing the ancient machine away. The humans and Crithians stood together, the tension between them gone. A new respect had been born in that moment. Marcus lowered the blade and looked up at the endless violet sky. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, but it did not scare him. Instead, it filled him with purpose. For the first time, both humans and Crithians understood. Sometimes, the greatest strength in the galaxy came not from power or might, but from the resilience of the human spirit.